Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we try to cut through all the noise, the information overload, and get straight to the stuff that actually matters, the impactful insights.
Exactly.
Today, we're plunging into something I think is incredibly common, maybe depressingly common, in our connected lives. How online disagreements can just, well, explode into full-blown conflict, even tearing entire communities apart. It's a fascinating and, at times pretty unsettling look at how we actually behave in these digital spaces we spend so much time in.
It truly is. And we've got a really rich set of source material for this deep dive today.
Right.
We've got a series of WeChat chat transcripts from two pretty distinct groups, one focused on gaming, the other on movies.
Okay.
And alongside these raw exchanges, these actual conversations, we also have analytical documents, a really detailed timeline of events, and even a glossary of terms that became, well, flashpoints in the discussion.
Ah, okay, so we have context for the slang, too.
Precisely. Our mission today is really to trace the specific threads of conflict. Follow how things unraveled, how it led to group members just leaving, others being outright removed, kicked out,
Wow.
and ultimately entire groups being closed down by, frankly, frustrated administrators. It's a compelling real-world case study in, well, the sociology of digital communication, I suppose.
Yeah.
It reveals the often unseen pressures and the breaking points within these online interactions.
That's right. So you're going to hear not just about the specific flashpoints and the actual language used, which gets pretty rough, but we'll also try to unpack the subtle and sometimes, let's be honest, not so subtle roles individuals played in all this.
Yeah, the dynamics.
We're going to explore what happens when online banter, which, can be a source of bonding and fun sometimes.
Sure, it often is.
This goes completely awry. How do different personalities navigate or catastrophically fail to navigate disagreements in a virtual space where all those nonverbal cues are just completely absent?
That's the key challenge, isn't it? Text-based communication.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just about what was said. It's about the underlying intentions, or at least the perceived intentions, right?
Yes, the perceived slights, the cumulative effect of just constant low-level friction.
Yeah, that drip, drip, drip.
Exactly. And how quickly a community can erode when these elements aren't effectively managed, or maybe even noticed until it's too late.
So buckle up, because this deep dive reveals some surprising and maybe perhaps uncomfortable insights into human behavior online. Okay, so our journey begins on April 16th. There's this conversation that, on the surface, seems pretty innocuous, just a casual chat.
Right.
But it quickly sets the stage for a whole series of escalating conflicts within these WeChat groups. The initial mention, it's logged at 1640, comes from a user named Lucas Panoli. And he states quite plainly, maybe with a hint of, world weariness, that dad group seems miserable.
Right. Just throws it out there.
Yeah. And it's a statement that, while it seems like a simple observation about some other group, an external group, it carries this immediate, almost judgmental undertone, doesn't it?
It does. It implies a sort of shared negative perception among the current group members about this other entity.
Like an in-joke, almost.
Kind of. And that sentiment, as you rightly point out, is very quickly echoed by others. It's not just a lone opinion. It signals a common, perhaps even, long-held perception of this particular external group, the Beijing Dads Group, or BDG, as they call it.
Right, the BDG.
So Ronnie Sanchez, just 11 minutes later at 16.51, he clarifies his own personal use for it. He says he just uses it to ask dad-related questions.
Okay, so it has some utility.
Exactly. That's crucial because it suggests that while the BDG might serve a practical informational purpose for some members, its general atmosphere is widely acknowledged as, well, less than ideal, maybe even actively unpleasant. And then Tim chimes in moments later, 16.51.43, with a simple, "it is most of the time," and adds an lol, right? Which reinforces this sense of shared, maybe lighthearted commiseration about the group's perceived grimness.
Right, like we all know.
Yeah. And then Trim at 16.52.11, he delivers that famous line, characterizing it with a dash of dark humor, perhaps, as the grim reality of modern fatherhood.
Oof.
Yeah. So this collective characterization, it immediately establishes this general perception of the Beijing Dads Group as a less than ideal online space. It's almost serving as a cautionary tale, maybe, for what their group might become, or perhaps what they really aim to avoid.
Interesting.
It kind of reveals a cultural undercurrent within this chat group that values a certain kind of, realism or cynicism about broader social constructs like fatherhood.
And here's where things take a pretty sharp turn, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
What's really fascinating is Ryan the Viking's immediate and somewhat aggressive interjection. It appears just seconds after Twin's comment at 16.52.11.
Super quick.
He just declares, "Take that, breeders."
Wow. Okay.
I mean, this isn't just an opinion anymore, is it? It's a direct, almost sneering statement that introduces a tone of disdain and mockery, which, as we'll see, becomes a recurring and increasingly problematic theme.
Yeah, that word choice is loaded.
It's almost as if he's actively trying to provoke a reaction, not just sharing an experience or observation. He's making a direct, kind of hostile statement towards the demographic being discussed, isn't he? Creating an us versus the them dynamic right from the get-go.
Absolutely. It's not about healthy debate or sharing information at this point.
No.
It's about drawing a line in the sand, maybe establishing dominance, signaling a willingness to engage in conflict. This early comment really does set the stage for the low tolerance for differing views that seems to define future interactions in the group.
Right, and that escalation.
It's incredibly rapid, isn't it?
Yeah.
From just casual observation to open derision. And it highlights a common yet often destructive online phenomenon where a seemingly casual comment can just become an opportunity for overt antagonism. And right on cue, we see Merlin, who our sources identify as a member of this very Beijing dads group, BDG, stepping in at 17.24.27.
Ah, okay. Someone from the actual group is in this chat.
Yes, and his immediate reaction is, "We in here bitching about the Beijing dads group."
Understandable reaction.
Totally. It indicates a clear sense of defensiveness. It's a challenge to the negative portrayal, a question of, why their group is being targeted in this way. Merlin's quick response suggests a personal investment and a feeling of being attacked, even when the comments are technically about an external group.
Especially after, "Take that, breeders."
Precisely. That comment implicitly groups Merlin into that category, right? So this reveals a deeper layer of online identity, how
Sure.
people identify with and feel protective of groups they belong to, even if they're not the primary subject of discussion at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Then James Wright asks for details at 17.41.52, effectively asking to be enlightened about the sadness of the dad group, which, just further encourages these elaborate and ultimately derisive critiques.
So it just keeps feeding itself.
Pretty much. This initial exchange perfectly illustrates how a seemingly peripheral topic can quickly draw individuals into conflict if they feel personally implicated, or if the tone shifts rapidly to hostility. It sets a really low precedent for constructive discourse right from the start.
Okay, so the conversation then broadens a bit, moves slightly beyond just the initial critiques of the BDG, but keeps that underlying current of, judgment, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The tone is set.
Jack Rogan describes his experience in multiple groups, stating at 18.57.58 that one is great, that the other is not so much. Which, naturally opens the door for a deeper dive into the more dubious nature of some of these online communities. And this leads user D to ask a rather pointed, maybe even provocative question at 19.24.23. Is the other the one they post hardcore porn in between discussions about children?
Wow. That's quite a leap.
Isn't it? It's not a neutral inquiry. It strongly suggests pre-existing rumors or negative stereotypes about these types of groups, possibly even specifically targeting the BDG, or at least a subset of them.
It instantly raises the stakes, introducing a highly inappropriate and potentially scandalous element into the discussion. Really pushes the boundaries of what constitutes acceptable banter.
Yeah, banter seems like the wrong word there.
Right. And Merlin's response to this accusation is immediate and visceral. It comes at 19.28.26. "I feel attacked. No hardcore porn in the BDG."
You can almost hear the emotion there.
Absolutely. His emotional reaction is palpable. It showcases the personal impact of such accusations, even if they're vague. He continues to emphatically deny hardcore content for the BDG.
Despite Jay mentioning another group.
Yes, despite Jay mentioning another group, CHAD, which he says does have such content on specific days, Mondays and Fridays, apparently. Jay's attempt to clarify at 19.29.02, saying HCD doesn't have any boobs, so that rules that out. And then mentioning CHAB, it indicates a differentiation between various dad or parenting-related groups.
Right.
But Merlin's focus remains squarely on defending the BDG's reputation. He even admits the CHAD group is mostly ha-ha regarding the questionable content, but for him, the BDG is a different story.
Okay.
It illustrates his deep investment in its perceived integrity and his clear discomfort with the insinuation that his community is engaging in such activities. His strong defense reveals how central group affiliation can be to one's online identity.
And then Then a new term enters the fray.
Yeah.
A highly charged one.
This is where it really takes a turn.
At 19.3D.44, Ryan the Viking, the same user who kicked things off with "Take that, breeders,"
Yep, him again.
he labels the group being discussed an elderly Coomer group.
Oh, Coomer. That's not standard vocabulary for most people.
Exactly. For those unfamiliar, and this is crucial for understanding the immediate visceral impact of the term, Coomer is a pejorative internet slang term. What's truly insightful here is how the introduction of specific internet-native pejoratives like Coomer doesn't just insult. It acts as a kind of linguistic accelerant, doesn't it?
It really does. It immediately tribalizes the conversation. It creates an in-group who understands and uses the term, and an out-group who is confused or offended.
Right, making de-escalation almost impossible.
Pretty much. And Merlin, understandably taken aback by such an unfamiliar and clearly negative term, asks for clarification at 19.34.08. Okay, I might sound old, but what does that mean?
Even adds a ha-ha to soften it, maybe.
Perhaps trying to, yeah. But this moment marks a significant turning point. It injects deeply offensive internet-specific slang into what was already a contentious discussion. It feels like a deliberate choice of language designed not just to denigrate, but maybe to exclude and mock anyone outside the immediate cultural context of that slang.
Yeah.
This is absolutely critical. The shift from general criticism about group content or perceived misery to the direct, unprovoked use of derogatory internet slang like Coomer elevates the conflict from a mere discussion to an outright personal attack.
It's no longer about the group. It's about the people in it.
Precisely. It's not just descriptive. It's an insult designed to mock, to dehumanize, and maybe to establish some kind of social hierarchy within the chat. And the term elderly Coomer group, it layers ageism with this pejorative sexualized slang.
Creating a doubly offensive label.
Exactly. It targets a person's identity on multiple fronts. As highlighted in our analysis documents, this type of language isn't just rude, it becomes a significant source of conflict and contributes to the negative atmosphere by making the targeted individual feel alienated and disrespected.
And Merlin asking for the definition.
Right. It isn't just about understanding the literal word, it's about comprehending the aggressive intent behind it and maybe the cultural chasm it reveals. This incident underscores how online communities, even those meant for casual interaction, can quickly weaponize language.
Yeah.
Creating an environment where individuals feel personally targeted and insulted, leading to a profound breakdown in civil discourse and ultimately, well, driving members away. It's a prime example of how specific subcultural slang can be deployed to create an unbridgeable communication gap.
Okay, so after throwing out elderly Coomer group, Ryan doesn't exactly back down or explain, does he?
No, quite the opposite. He doubles down on the mockery, clearly seems uninterested in clarifying the term or acknowledging Merlin's obvious discomfort.
Right.
Instead, he continues to imply that the group members are old, judging them without actually knowing them. At 19.42.42, he asserts, "Cute, you think there is anyone that young in this group?" Followed by a laughing emoji.
Which is just condescending.
Totally. It's a condescending dismissal designed to belittle Merlin's defense. And Merlin, clearly identifying Ryan's behavior as intentionally antagonistic, responds with direct criticism. He states at 19.43.04, "Cute that you think you can judge an entire group without knowing them," and then later delivers a more pointed jab at 19.49.04. "That's how being an asshole works. Fixed it for you."
Okay, so Merlin's pushing back directly now.
Yeah, he's no longer just defending the group. He's actively calling out Ryan's hostile behavior for what he perceives it to be.
And the dialogue gets pretty personal here, doesn't it?
Increasingly so. It becomes really acrimonious, highlighting that core conflict in online interaction. The clash between what some see as banter and what others experience as genuine offense. Merlin, feeling the sting of the attacks and the dismissal of his attempts to defend the BDG, tries a different approach. He tries to elaborate on the broader, maybe more empathetic challenges for expat dads trying to find community in a foreign country.
He tries to inject some perspective.
Exactly. At 20.05.16, he states, "With a level of vulnerability and earnestness that really stands in stark contrast to the mockery, it's hard enough for dads to find a community in their home country or culture, and that much harder in such a different country and culture, dealing with culture differences and relationship issues while also trying to relate to others and enjoy a spare moment."
That's a pretty heartfelt statement.
It is. And then he directly calls out Ryan's anonymity, asserting, "Anonymity doesn't excuse being a dick." This is Merlin appealing to empathy, right? A shared human experience, maybe a basic code of conduct.
But it doesn't land.
Seems to fall on deaf ears. He's attempting to elevate the conversation beyond petty insults, but the others just aren't willing to meet him there.
And this is where you really see that core clash of values, isn't it? It feels like a critical moment for understanding how these groups fracture.
Absolutely. Merlin is seeking understanding, empathy, recognition of these legitimate struggles expat parents face. He's clearly offended by the gratuitous negativity.
He's making a genuine plea for respect, maybe even just a bit of human connection.
But Ryan at 20.100.02 and Zach Gilson at 20.unsteam.58, they just dismiss his concerns entirely. They tell him he's reading into it way too much and that it's just idle shit-talking and banter.
The classic, it's just banter defense.
Textbook example, really.
Yeah.
And it often functions as a form of gaslighting, attempting to invalidate Merlin's legitimate emotional response by portraying him as overly sensitive or irrational.
Yeah, shifting the blame.
It's a powerful, insidious tactic in online spaces because it shifts the blame for the conflict onto the offended party. And Zach even goes further, asking if Merlin is a founding father of this dad-talking and titty share group at 20.07.01.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, just further fueling the mockery and trivializing Merlin's very genuine defense of a community he clearly values. This refusal to acknowledge the validity of Merlin's feelings pretty much seals the fate of this interaction, doesn't it?
Seems like it.
And the persistence of these derogatory terms and the brazen attempt to normalize them, it's deeply notable. Zach Gilson, despite the clear impact these words are having, later comments at 20.10.20, I don't think being a Coomer is that bad.
Seriously.
And then almost immediately corrects himself at 20.10.1.29 to Gunnar, implying it might even be a worse insult or maybe just indicating a casual interchanging of similarly pejorative terms.
So he's not really backing down at all.
Not really, and Merlin's perspective becomes crystal clear. While he might not find the literal term Coomer inherently bad in isolation, as he states at 20.12.18, the intention behind it was stupid.
That's the key, isn't it? The intent.
Absolutely. It's not just the word, but the malicious intent with which it's deployed. He then articulates his deep frustration with Ryan, describing him at 20.15.53 as some neckbeard man-child wasting everyone's time trying to be clever and pretending he isn't some incel wannabe.
Wow, okay. He's letting loose now.
He is, and this culminates in Merlin's decision to leave the group, stated unequivocally at 20.0.006. Peace out. This isn't the group for me.
And he gives a reason.
He does. He explicitly states as the ultimate reason for his departure that instant shit-talking just brings everyone's IQ just a bit down at 20.1.48.
Fair enough.
It's a direct, observable, and deeply personal consequence of the escalating conflict, the persistent use of offensive language, and the outright refusal of some members to engage civilly or even acknowledge the very real impact of their words. It illustrates a clear breaking point for a user who sought community and civility, but just couldn't tolerate the hostile, derisive atmosphere anymore.
What's particularly striking and, frankly, quite disturbing is that Merlin's departure doesn't really de-escalate things, does it?
No, not at all. It seems to have the opposite effect, if anything.
Right. It seems to embolden his detractors. They turn his exit into a new opportunity for mockery, almost solidifying their perceived victory.
Exactly. Immediately after Merlin's heartfelt peace out message, Zach Gilson at 20.1.18 just reverts straight back to the derogatory term, commenting, back to Elder Coom.
Unbelievable.
It's not just a casual remark, it feels like a deliberate, almost celebratory act of continuing the antagonism. Shows a complete lack of remorse or recognition of the impact their words had. It signals to anyone left in the group that this kind of behavior isn't just tolerated, but maybe, in fact, rewarded.
And others join in.
Oh, yeah. Daniel then jumps in at 20.21.47, joking about Merlin's dope name being up for grabs, further trivializing his departure, indicates the group doesn't perceive his exit as any kind of loss, but rather just an opportunity for a callous joke. And Sean escalates this even further at 20.23.24, suggesting he'll buy the Boomer Coomer during the next Steam sale, essentially trying to commodify and further ridicule Merlin's online persona, reducing him to a consumable object of derision.
Wow.
This post-departure mockery, as our analysis notes, really highlights the deeply entrenched nature of the conflict and the group's willingness to just lean into negativity rather than reflect on their actions or the consequences.
Did anyone else comment on it?
Nicholas, at 21.27.17, does make a pretty astute observation. I think this was the straw that broke the camel's back for Merlin. Acknowledges the cumulative effect of the harassment.
But that doesn't change the tone.
Doesn't seem to shift the group's trajectory at all. Sean's subsequent comment at 21.1.45 is particularly chilling. It's only fun to go after clueless people who get easily offended.
Oh, that's bad.
Isn't it? It illustrates a calculated, almost cynical intent to provoke. This isn't accidental banter anymore. It's a declaration that their behavior is intentional, a form of entertainment derived directly from others' distress.
That reveals a really problematic aspect of the group's internal culture, doesn't it?
Deeply problematic. Where mocking vulnerable or offended members is not only acceptable but actively encouraged. This phenomenon, often observed in online spaces, is sometimes called the online disinhibition effect, right?
Yeah, where anonymity makes people bolder.
Exactly. Anonymity and a lack of real-world consequences can lead individuals to say and do things they would hopefully never consider offline, amplifying aggressive and hostile behaviors.
And the conversation takes another turn after this.
It does. It takes an even darker and, frankly, more disturbing turn. It shifts from the direct mockery of Merlin to broader, sweeping, and deeply cynical discussions about personal relationships and societal stereotypes.
Like what?
At 21.44.37, John speculates about husbands who dislike their wives but need them for legal reasons.
Okay.
He then elaborates, suggesting that many incels, that pejorative term for involuntary celibates in older generations, literally just OT overtime in the office to stay away from their wives and kids, just playing on their phones.
Wow, that's a pretty bleak picture.
It perpetuates a highly negative and generalized stereotype of unhappy, disengaged fathers. Cynically connects back to the initial miserable dad group theme, but now with this added misogynistic and deeply pessimistic edge. Lucas Pinoli adds to this at 21.46.36, suggesting that this phenomenon is like the opposite of expat dads when we grew up, painting this bleak picture of a generation seemingly devoid of marital happiness or family connection.
So the negativity just spreads outwards.
Exactly. This tangential discussion, born from the initial conflict, reinforces the pervasive negativity surrounding traditional notions of fatherhood and marriage within this specific group. It's a really striking contrast to Merlin's earlier defense of the BDG as a potentially supportive community for men facing challenges abroad.
Yeah.
The chat participants, including Eugenio, Ryan, and Lucas, all contribute to this bleak portrayal. Eugenio sarcastically offers at 21.52.00, at least they have solitaire on their PC, a jab at the perceived emptiness of these men's lives. While Lucas at 21.55.05 suggests these men are around 40-50 and cooked, that slang term implying they're emotionally or mentally exhausted beyond redemption.
Cooked, right.
Ultimately, Daniel's sarcastic comment at 22.08.50, imagine loving your wife. Cringe. Couldn't be me. Just perfectly encapsulates the cynical and dismissive tone that permeated the group following Merlin's departure.
It really shows how things devolve, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This entire segment underscores how easily online groups can devolve when derogatory language and a dismissive attitude towards differing perspectives become normalized. The initial targeted harassment against Merlin basically transforms into a broader, misanthropic, and misogynistic worldview that further alienates anyone who might hold differing, more positive views on family or community.
Creates a really toxic environment.
Deeply toxic.
Yeah.
And it actively drives away members who seek more civil, supportive, or even just neutral interaction. This illustrates how initial specific conflicts can kind of metastasize into a pervasive culture of negativity that ultimately makes a group unsustainable.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly, but we're still staying firmly within this realm of online dynamics, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see other topics that capture the group's attention. And these reveal their broader digital interests and also how online platform policies, even external ones, can become points of contention, maybe even serve as a subtle foreshadowing of internal conflicts.
That's a good way to put it.
So on April 23rd at 20.33.02, Lucas shares a Reddit post. It's about Nexus Mods deleting a body type mod for the Oblivion remastered game.
Ah, okay. Gaming mods.
Yeah. This immediately flags a different kind of conflict. One between users and the overarching platform moderation, specifically within the often, let's say, passionate gaming modification community.
Oh yeah, modding communities can be intense.
It opens up a discussion about perceived fairness and control in online spaces, doesn't it?
It definitely brings in the complex world of gaming modifications and those ongoing debates within those communities about content moderation, particularly concerning user-generated content that might push boundaries or violate platform guidelines, often touches on issues of artistic freedom versus community standards.
Right.
And the source notes that the mod was up for about 30 minutes, moderator locked the comments, then deleted the mod 10 minutes later.
Wow, that's fast.
Very fast. It indicates a quick, decisive, and arguably understandably, quite unilateral action by the platform moderators. It demonstrates the immense power wielded by platform administrators and the often swift, unyielding nature of their interventions.
Which can leave users feeling, what, unheard, unfairly treated.
All of the above. Or simply bewildered by a lack of transparent explanation. This incident, while external to their immediate WeChat group, resonates deeply with their collective experience of online spaces and their rules. It implicitly sets a precedent or maybe an expectation for how moderation might be handled and how users might react to it, even within their own casual chats.
Like a mirror.
Exactly. It's a mirror reflecting potential future conflicts within their own group, particularly when we later look at Louie's actions as a moderator.
Okay. And then Jay Krogan jumps right into this discussion, right?
Yeah.
He offers his own grievances.
Yes, confirming this shared experience of navigating digital rules. At 20.33.34, he complains about the Asmongold sub is full of total wankers, using that British slang term for foolish or contemptible people. Immediately aligns himself with a broader sentiment of frustration towards certain online communities.
But then he reveals something quite personal, doesn't he?
He does. His own rather striking personal experience, his permanent ban from Reddit.
A permaban. Okay.
This detail about Jay's experience isn't just a casual aside. It feels like a significant piece of information. It demonstrates his personal history with strict online moderation and exclusion. It adds another layer to the group's collective understanding of online conflict.
Showing how embedded they are in this stuff.
Exactly how deeply these individuals are embedded in the digital ecosystem and how often they find themselves at odds with its governing structures. It also gives context, maybe, to why some members might react so strongly to moderation within their own WeChat group. Later on, they've seen this play out before, often to their own detriment.
That makes sense.
It certainly is a striking detail, and it immediately prompts further inquiry from other members, showing their shared curiosity about the mechanics of online control. Trium asks at 20.35.49 about the mechanics of such a ban.
How does it actually work?
Right. Shows a keen interest in the technical enforcement side. Jay explains at 20.36.31 that any new account I made, they managed to know it was me somehow and auto-banned.
Wow, so they track you.
Yeah, it points to sophisticated tracking methods employed by platforms, often involving IP blocks that's restricting access based on your internet address or other forms of digital fingerprinting that identify users even if they create new accounts.
Makes a ban stick.
Pretty much. Ensures that a ban truly sticks, creating a persistent, often frustrating cat-and-mouse game between platform governance and determined users. He even mentions waiting 100 days, which is their data retention policy, to try again at 0.36.45.
So he knows the rules inside out.
Indicates a deep familiarity with Reddit's policies and a tenacious effort to circumvent them. This illustrates not only the technical side of online community management, but also the length users will go to maintain their online presence, even when facing significant hurdles. It adds another layer to the group's collective experience with online moderation and perceived unfairness, showing that these members are deeply immersed in, and sometimes at odds with, the rules governing their digital spaces. This shared experience with digital enforcement mechanisms subtly shapes their perspectives on moderation within their own WeChat group, setting up a readiness perhaps to challenge or circumvent authority when they feel it's unjust. Hashtag 2.2, the Coomer recurrence and broader slang use, various dates.
Okay, so we've already heard the term Coomer come up with such, well, devastating effect in the dad group discussion, particularly when Ryan the Viking used it. But another related term, Gooner, also surfaces, doesn't it? Which demonstrates the pervasive nature of this type of internet slang within the group's communication. Shows how quickly certain lexicons become embedded.
It does.
At 21.26.25, Chris takes offense at being called a gooner after admitting to being a gooner.
Ah, okay. That's interesting.
Isn't it? It highlights a curious paradox in online identity and language. How self-identification with a term doesn't necessarily grant others the right to use it against you, or in any context they choose.
That is a truly fascinating point about self-identification versus external labeling, and it really underscores the nuanced and often contradictory nature of internet slang.
How so?
Well, for many, these terms Coomer, others like them, they can be used ironically or within a specific subculture as a form of self-deprecating humor or maybe even group bonding.
Like reclaiming the word.
Kind of. It's a way to signal belonging or to diffuse potentially offensive terms by reclaiming them. However, Chris's reaction demonstrates that while one might admit to behavior or identify with a term, the context, the intent, and, crucially, the identity of the speaker using that term externally can still render it deeply offensive.
So who says it matters as much as what's said?
Absolutely. It highlights that online language isn't just about literal dictionary definitions. It's about unspoken social contracts, power dynamics, and the perceived intent behind the words. The fact that Chris is offended after admitting to it suggests that the context or intent of the speaker matters significantly more than the word itself.
It's the difference between a joke and an insult.
Exactly. The critical difference between self-effacing humor and outright insult or denigration. It's about who has the right to use certain language and against whom.
It also speaks volumes about the prevalence and maybe normalization of these types of terms within the group's lexicon, doesn't it?
Right.
Indicates a shared, albeit sometimes problematic vocabulary. Sean, for example, later jokes at 21.07.05 in the wake of Merlin's departure and the continued Elder Coom jokes. Aren't we all fellow Coomers in here?
Right. That rhetorical question.
It's not just a throwaway line, is it? It speaks to the group's internal culture and their comfort or maybe discomfort with these terms, trying to gauge the temperature of the room, perhaps.
I think that rhetorical question indicates a complex dynamic, a degree of normalization, maybe even a performative adoption of the derogatory term.
How do you mean?
Well, it could be seen as an attempt to diffuse the term by broadening its application, suggesting a collective self-deprecating identity, or simply as a way to further mock those who are offended by such labels by implying that such offense is baseless if everyone is one of them.
Right. Minimize the offense.
Yeah. The glossary defines gooner as a term with various internet slang meanings used in the chat in a potentially offensive context, and that ambiguity is key because it means the term can be deployed with different intentions and received with varying levels of offense depending on the recipient's interpretation of that intent and the speaker's perceived malice. This fluidity in meaning contributes significantly to the overall friction we observe in the chats.
Because what one person thinks is a joke,
another might find a grave insult. These micro-conflicts over language, seemingly minor, are actually integral to understanding the broader group dissolution. They chip away at trust and civility, creating an environment where a shared vocabulary can quickly become a source of division rather than cohesion.
Yeah.
The casual use of such terms, even by self-proclaimed gooners like Chris, illustrates maybe a collective desensitization or a willingness to push boundaries that ultimately alienates others, making the group a less welcoming, more volatile space.
Okay, so the second major flashpoint we have in the materials, after the whole dad group saga, it shifts our focus pretty dramatically, doesn't it? To media representation and critical discussion.
Different topic, same kind of intensity.
Specifically surrounding the highly public and often contentious casting of Bella Ramsey as Ellie in The Last of Us TV show. This discussion kicks off on April 24th, about a week after the dad group fallout.
Which highlights how quickly new points of contention can just emerge and consume these online groups.
Yeah. And the spark here is a really common one in fan communities, isn't it? The perceived fidelity of an adaptation. How close is it to the source material?
Indeed. And the core of this conflict, as identified in our briefing document, is a crucial distinction that often gets blurred really quickly in online discourse.
Which is?
Whether comments about her appearance were valid critiques related to the character's age progression, or simply inappropriate personal opinions about her attractiveness. That nuance gets lost so easily in the heat of online debate.
Right. Is it about the character or the actor?
Pretty much. John opens the discussion at 10.42.47 by saying the actress looks exactly the same and she's supposed to be like 5-6 years older now in the show's narrative, referring to the character's progression from the first game to the second.
Okay, so that's a critique based on the source material's timeline.
Initially, yes. He elaborates at 10.43.49, adding that she still has that child actor look which kind of clashes with the older and more mature character of Ellie in Pluto. This immediately frames the debate around a perceived mismatch between the actor's physical appearance and the character's narrative age progression.
Which is, as you said, a very common point of critique in adaptations of beloved games or books.
Absolutely. It's an argument often rooted in a fan's deeply personal visualization of a character, how they imagined them.
But then others chime in with different perspectives.
Yes. Lucas Pinoli at 10.50.46 introduces a more pragmatic perspective, pointing out the practical challenges of recasting an actor for a time skip in a major production. He states, "It is a huge risk to replace an actor and will almost never happen unless forced to."
Acknowledging the industry realities.
Right. However, Eugenio then attempts to inject some factual information into this subjective discussion. At 10.54.08, he notes that Bella Ramsey was 18 during filming of TLOU1 and 21 now, so technically age-wise now it checks with the game persona.
Try and counter the looks like a child argument with her actual age.
Exactly, bringing a factual counterpoint to a visually driven perception.
But John doesn't accept that.
No. He doubles down, demonstrating how deeply subjective perceptions can override factual information in these heated online debates. He asserts at 10.56.58, her actual age doesn't matter, she still looks 14.
Okay, that's pretty blunt.
It's absolutely critical because it explicitly dismisses factual age in favor of perceived visual appearance. Reveals that for some, the aesthetic perceived fit overrides not just factual age, but also considerations for acting performance or narrative practicalities.
Does he offer any solution?
He does suggest at 10.58.23, maybe they could have just done a better job with makeup touch-ups to age her a bit, indicating that his criticism, at least ostensibly, is directed at the production's choices rather than purely the actress herself.
So trying to frame it as a technical critique.
But this sets up that crucial point of contention. Is the criticism truly about acting or character development or makeup? Or is it, as Louis will argue later, simply about physical appearance, perhaps driven by unspoken biases? The debate rapidly shifts from a simple observation to a deeply subjective interpretation of visual cues.
That is fertile ground for disagreement online.
Absolutely. Especially in a text-based medium where nuance is easily lost and assumptions are easily made about underlying motivations.
Okay, so this is precisely where Louis steps in.
Yeah.
Right. And we know he's an administrator, a moderator of this particular movie group.
Yes, he enters the fray here.
And he attempts to reframe the discussion, steer it away from what he clearly perceives as, well, inappropriate commentary and a fixation on the actress's looks.
At 11.03.25, he defends Bella Ramsey as a great actress, asserting that he doesn't see why people get hung so much on trivialities.
Okay, trying to focus on the performance.
Right. He then directly questions the intense, almost obsessive focus on her looks at 11.04.50, stating with a touch of exasperation, in the first season, kind of fucked up that some grown-ass men are so torn on how she looks.
That's pretty direct.
It is. He's clearly trying to steer the conversation towards performance and maybe the maturity of the critics, rather than dwelling on the actress's appearance. Perhaps trying to call out what he sees as a problematic double standard.
But John persists.
He does. Demonstrating a stubborn persistence in his viewpoint, John reiterates his point at 11.04.54, saying he just wants stories about adults and that she looks like a child.
Okay.
This persistence, despite Louis' direct attempt to shift focus and introduce a different perspective, pushes Louis to a more direct and ultimately inflammatory challenge.
What does he say?
Louis then explicitly accuses the underlying motivation for the criticism. He states at 11.07.23, that's why it's so weird that people hide behind other arguments. And then, with very little ambiguity, he directly concludes at 11.07.40, but in the end it's because they find a teen girl unattractive.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
That's a direct accusation. That's a major flashpoint.
Absolutely. It moves the conversation from a general critique of casting to a highly personal and inflammatory judgment of the critic's motives, implying hypocrisy or disingenuousness, questioning their moral integrity, really.
That's often an irreversible step in online arguments, isn't it? Attacking the person, not the argument.
Pretty much guarantees escalation.
And this is where the civility completely breaks down. The discussion pivots from the topic to a direct confrontation with the moderator.
Andrew Nye immediately calls this a straw man argument at 11.07.39.
Okay, explain straw man again in this context.
Right, so a straw man, as our glossary defines it, is a fallacious argument that misrepresents an opponent's position to make it easier to attack. Andrew Nye clearly feels his nuanced critique about acting, character fit, makeup, whatever, is being unfairly reduced by Louis to a simplistic, morally questionable critique of attractiveness. He feels Louis isn't addressing his actual points.
And he labels Louis' comment extremely toxic at 11.09.55.
Yes. This is a significant moment because it turns the conversation from a debate about an actress into a direct personal attack against Louis, accusing him of bad faith argumentation.
And does Louis back down?
No. Louis stands by his assertion. He even quotes himself at one point to emphasize his point. The straw man accusation in this context highlights the perceived misrepresentation and the complete breakdown of trust. Andrew Nye feels his critique is being unfairly simplified and demonized.
And the escalation is just rapid from here.
Very rapid, moving from a disagreement about a movie to accusations of toxicity. And Louis ultimately tells John, take a time out at 11.59.
Ah, the moderator warning.
The moderator issuing a direct, formal warning indicates the conversation has crossed a line from legitimate debate to unacceptable behavior in Louis' view, and it clearly foreshadows the inevitable removal of John. The repeated accusations of toxicity and straw manning just underscore the breakdown of respectful communication, pushing the group closer to fragmentation as members become increasingly polarized against each other and the moderator. It illustrates how the power dynamics within a group can quickly turn an intellectual disagreement into a personal battle.
With real consequences for the community.
Exactly. Real consequences for community cohesion.
So after the take a timeout warning, what happens next?
Well, it happens incredibly fast. In a swift and decisive move, indicative of his growing frustration with the spiraling debate and maybe the direct challenge to his moderation, Louis removes John from the group with a simple and blunt bye-bye at 11.91.11.
Just like that. Bye-bye.
Just like that. Immediate, no public explanation, no further warning beyond that prior, maybe ambiguous, take a timeout.
And how do the others react?
The immediate reaction from Eugenio is quite telling. Oh, really kicked out at 11.3.38, expressing genuine surprise at the abruptness and finality of the moderation.
So even though things were heated, the actual kick was still jarring.
It signals that, yeah. Even in the midst of conflict, the actual act of removal was still maybe unexpected for some members. It reflects how jarring such direct, forceful moderation actions can be within a casual chat environment.
Suggest maybe a lack of clear boundaries beforehand?
Could be. Or just a perceived overreach of authority in the moment. Chris's comment at 11.3.45 is also interesting. Pulling a Trump on him.
Okay, bringing politics into it.
Injecting that politically charged reference, suggesting an authoritarian or unilateral act, further highlighting the perceived heavy-handedness of Louis' action from some perspectives.
So framing it as arbitrary.
Pretty much, implying Louis' decision was absolute and perhaps arbitrary rather than a reasoned moderation based on clearly communicated rules. And the suggestion by Chris immediately after to invite an obvious shill, Wei for instance, to replace John at 11.12.08.
What's that about?
It just underscores the cynical and mocking tone that has permeated the group. It's a jibe at the idea of a balanced discussion, implying that Louis' moderation makes the group an echo chamber where only compliant voices are welcome, effectively trivializing the very concept of fair moderation.
So the sources we have suggest that Louis' frustration was understandable.
Yes, clearly evident and arguably justified given the escalating and personal nature of the attacks. But the timing and communication around the kick contribute to the perception of a heavy-handed approach. And that's absolutely crucial for understanding the subsequent fragmentation of the group.
Why crucial?
Because it implies that even if Louis felt entirely justified in his action, the abruptness and lack of a clear, immediate public rationale for the kick, or maybe a more graduated response, left ample room for negative interpretation. Members who might have sympathized with John's perspective or simply disagreed with Louis' moderation style felt that a line had been crossed.
Fueling resentment and a sense of unfairness.
Exactly. The absence of transparency, or at least perceived transparency, left a void that was quickly filled by assumptions of bias or autocratic behavior. The analysis suggests that while John's persistent focus on appearance was indeed a source of friction, Louis' intervention became perceived as an overly aggressive suppression of dissent rather than a measured attempt to restore civility.
So the moderation backfired, in a way.
In terms of group cohesion, yes. This perceived heavy-handedness directly contributes to the breakdown of trust between the moderator and a segment of the group members. It becomes a catalyst for further division rather than a resolution. It illustrates how moderation, even if intended to restore order, can inadvertently exacerbate underlying tensions if not handled with clear, consistent communication and perceived fairness.
So this single act of removal.
It acts as a pivotal moment, splintering the community and setting the stage for direct defiance and the creation of alternative, rebellious spaces, fundamentally altering the group's future trajectory. It's a classic example of how even a potentially necessary action, if poorly executed, can backfire spectacularly.
Okay, so John gets kicked. What happened next was almost inevitable, wasn't it? A direct, defiant counter-movement launched with remarkable speed.
Almost immediately. Immediately following John's abrupt removal, at 11.14.21, Andrew Nye shares a QR code for a new group, explicitly titled Group Movie Foo.
Okay, setting up a rival group right away.
Exactly. And his accompanying message is a clear and unequivocal indictment of Louis' moderation. If you don't like being kicked because some mod is throwing retrums over people disagreeing, please join.
Throwing retrums.
Yeah, vivid slang, basically accusing Louis of having a childish tantrum.
Wow. So this isn't just an invitation. It's a direct challenge to Louis' authority, a public call to action for dissatisfied members, the immediate formation of an explicit splinter group.
It's a digital declaration of independence, essentially. A classic, almost archetypal reaction to perceived unfair or authoritarian moderation in online spaces, creating an alternative space where different rules, or at least a different interpretation and enforcement of rules, might apply.
Andrew's frustration is pretty clear.
Palpable and openly expressed. He perceives Louis' actions not as legitimate rule enforcement, but as emotional and arbitrary. This direct accusation is a significant blow to the original group's cohesion and to Louis' legitimacy as a moderator.
And he also takes a shot at the group name.
Yeah, he dismissively calls cinema a stupid term at 11.14.41, which ironically sparks yet another minor debate about terminology within this newly formed rebellious offshoot group.
Oh, really? Even then?
Even in the act of rebellion, old habits of linguistic nitpicking die hard, it seems.
It's quite striking, isn't it? And, frankly, a little bit absurd that even in a moment of such high tension and group division, the conversation can briefly devolve into this humorous yet deeply illustrative debate about semantics.
James Wright, at 11.11.01, asserts, the cinema is where you go to see a movie, trying for a clear functional definition, while Eugenio, at 11.16.1.04, offers that cinema is the film industry, showing a broader understanding.
And others jump in, too.
Lucas, Nicholas, others all chime in with their differing opinions and cultural interpretations of the terms cinema and theater. It's almost a moment of light relief amidst the drama of a group fracturing.
But it also shows something deeper.
I think so. It shows how easily the group, even a newly formed one, can get sidetracked by trivial linguistic disputes. This might be a coping mechanism for the underlying tension, or simply reflect the truly diverse cultural backgrounds within the expat community, where even basic terms can carry different connotations.
Yeah, American versus British usage, maybe.
Exactly. It's a key observation that reveals a deeper characteristic of this group. These seemingly minor linguistic spats, like the later mention of the Cars 2 in theaters eating beans meme at 11.23.12,
Okay.
they can be a symptom of underlying friction, where even minor disagreements are magnified and become opportunities for banter or further conflict. It highlights these different cultural contexts. What one person considers precise, another might find pedantic or even stupid, as Andrew stated.
So this constant minor friction adds up.
I think it demonstrates a group inherently prone to disagreement on multiple levels, from deep-seated opinions on media representation to simple definitions of words. This susceptibility to linguistic disputes, even at moments of high drama, foreshadows how difficult it would be to maintain any form of sustained civil discourse.
It's a microcosm of a larger communication breakdown.
Exactly, where even the smallest semantic difference can become a point of contention rather than curiosity, eroding the foundations of shared understanding.
Okay, amidst this highly charged atmosphere, the splintering, the new group forming another personal accusation surfaces, right? Introducing a new, deeply significant layer of interpersonal tension.
Yes, this one reveals pre-existing dynamics between members. Lucas Pinoli at 11.money/242 directly accuses Louis of making fun of an incident that almost killed me a few weeks ago.
Wow, that's heavy.
It's a significant moment because it's not just about the current conflict over moderation. It points to a history of interaction and a deep, unaddressed personal grievance that Lucas holds against Louis.
So the current animosity isn't isolated.
No, it highlights that it's built upon a foundation of past interactions, perceived slights, maybe unaddressed issues. Demonstrates how accumulated resentments can boil over during periods of high stress like this.
How does Louis respond to that?
Well, this reveals a critical pre-existing dynamic and a potential, perhaps unintentional insensitivity from Louis. But Louis, to his credit, apologizes at 11.77.21.
He does.
Yeah, he states, "I'm sorry, Pepito. I thought it never got that serious and that he thought it'd be funny harmless since it was so long ago."
Pedo. Okay. Seems familiar.
Suggests some level of prior familiarity or friendliness, maybe, but this interaction adds crucial complexity to Louis's character, doesn't it?
How so?
While he is indeed this frustrated moderator making decisive actions, he's also fallible, capable of misjudging others' feelings, and seemingly genuinely remorseful in this instance. His apology, though maybe belated and ill-timed given the larger group meltdown, suggests a recognition of his misstep and an attempt to mend a personal relationship amidst the group's chaos.
Shows he's not just an authoritarian figure.
Exactly. Portrays him as a human being grappling with the immense challenges of managing an online community and maintaining personal relationships within it. Showcases the emotional toll of moderation.
It really underscores how past interactions, even seemingly minor ones, can profoundly contribute to the overall atmosphere, doesn't it?
And how easily intent can be misconstrued in text-based communication.
Yeah. What Louis perceived as funny, harmless banter, especially since it was so long ago, was clearly a deeply distressing, potentially traumatic event for Lucas.
It serves as a powerful reminder that in online spaces where all those nonverbal cues, tone of voice, facial expressions, body language are entirely absent, context, personal histories, and individual sensitivities are absolutely critical.
A casual joke can land really badly.
Exactly. A flippant remark, a thoughtless comment, can inadvertently trigger deep-seated emotions or reveal a profound lack of empathy, further eroding trust and contributing to the overall decline in group cohesion. This individual conflict, separate from the main dad group or Bella Ramsey debates, adds to the cumulative weight of unresolved issues that ultimately led to the group's fragmentation.
Shows these communities are complex webs.
Intricate webs of past interactions, personal feelings, and often unspoken grievances, not just about the topic of the day.
Okay, so after all this chaos, the kicking, the splinter group, the personal accusations, what does Louis do? Does he just give up?
Not immediately. In what appears to be a final, maybe almost desperate attempt to restore some semblance of order and salvage his remaining group, Cinemar, Louis posts a comprehensive group notice at 11:30:00.
A formal notice.
Yes, and this notice isn't merely a formality. It feels like a direct, reactive response to the escalating chaos and persistent conflicts that have been unfolding. It explicitly outlines a new set of rules and, crucially, a list of previously problematic or banned topics.
So it's Louis's last stand, maybe, trying to pivot from informal chat to formal rules.
Seems like it. A desperate pivot from informal social dynamics to formal, codified control. And this group notice is incredibly revealing about the recurring problems Louis was facing as a moderator. It functions almost as a direct mirror to many of the conflicts we've already discussed.
How so? What does it say?
Well, it explicitly bans spoilers for content not yet accessible in China, a common and frustrating issue in expat groups, right? Where members might have access to media before it's officially released locally.
Okay, that makes sense.
It emphasizes that links should be accompanied by at least a brief comment, which directly addresses the problem of members just dropping links without context, leading to unstructured, often irrelevant discussions.
Yeah, drive-by linking.
Exactly. And most importantly, it reiterates the need to keep it civil, no personal attacks, with the clear, unambiguous warning of a ban from the group for excessive abuse of these rules.
Which directly targets the stuff we've been talking about.
Precisely. That specific rule directly targets the kind of derogatory language, relentless mockery, and deeply personal accusations that drove Merlin away and led directly to John's removal. It's a testament to the fact that these issues were not isolated incidents, but systemic problems that Louis felt compelled to address formally.
So this notice isn't just a generic set of rules any group might adopt.
Not at all. It's practically a post-mortem of the very conflicts we've been analyzing, distilled into actionable rules. The banned topics and emphasized behaviors are direct reflections of the group's recent failures. The inability to discuss movies without devolving into personal attacks on actors.
Right.
The casual use of offensive terms like Coomer and Gooner, and the general lack of respectful engagement that had somehow become normalized.
It shows Louis's exasperation.
Completely. And his clear shift towards a stricter, more explicit, and formal form of moderation. Moving away from informal social cues and the expectation of self-regulation to direct, codified rules with clear consequences. It's a stark admission that the unwritten rules of social conduct had completely failed. Indeed. The analysis confirms that this notice reveals that specific problematic topics were being discussed, necessitating the creation of explicit rules. It's a formal acknowledgement of the profound breakdown in self-regulation within the community, a final, desperate attempt to impose structure from above.
Moving from informal to formal control.
Exactly. Before this, moderation might have been more reactive or implicit, relying on social norms, but now it's codified. Highlights the severity of the issues and the last resort of an overwhelmed administrator. The stark warning of a ban from the group for excessive abuse underscores the high stakes for continued membership. Signals a zero-tolerance policy for behaviors that had previously been indulged, perhaps.
And the overall consequence of all these conflicts.
Well, as detailed in our sources, the conflicts resulted in individuals leaving groups, people being kicked out, and Louis, as a moderator, closing several groups out of frustration. This group notice is therefore a testament to the profound impact of unresolved conflict on administrators.
Who eventually just run out of energy or patience.
Exactly. Who, when pushed to their limits, resort to drastic measures like formalizing rules and ultimately shutting down communities entirely. Not just to preserve order, but often to preserve their own sanity and maybe the remnants of civility elsewhere. It represents a pivot from a loosely structured chat to a strictly controlled environment, born directly and painfully from the preceding chaos and the repeated failure of informal governance.
Okay, so now we get to the tricky part, right? When a group dissolves or fragments like this, it's easy and often tempting to just point fingers.
Find the villain.
Yeah. Our immediate human instinct might be to identify a single antagonist, a bad apple who ruined the barrel, or a singular event that was the definitive tipping point.
Sure, it simplifies things.
But our sources make it abundantly clear that determining singular blame in these complex online dynamics is just, well, it's a gross oversimplification, isn't it?
It really is. It's rarely a clear-cut case of one person or one event. It's almost always a result of interwoven factors and individual actions contributing to a collective decline. It's more of a systemic issue, not just an individual failing.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. While we can and should identify specific behaviors that contributed significantly to the negative outcome, attributing sole blame just overlooks the systemic and emergent nature of online group dynamics. These environments are complex adaptive systems, right?
You mean?
Meaning individual actions ripple through the collective, influencing and being influenced by others in a kind of feedback loop. It's more about understanding contributions and patterns, recognizing that the group culture itself can either mitigate or, as we saw here, tragically amplify individual provocations and toxic behaviors.
So it's more about understanding the contributions.
Exactly. The analysis document provides a breakdown of several individuals whose actions, in combination, was significant drivers of the dissolution. This approach allows us to see how different types of behaviors, from active provocation and linguistic aggression to less effective or maybe heavy-handed moderation, all played a role in the eventual breakdown, created a cascade of negative consequences.
So it's a shared responsibility in a way.
Diffused across many actors and actions rather than concentrated in one place.
Okay, so if we accept this multifaceted view, let's unpack the roles of some of the key players identified in our sources, understanding their contribution within this complex web. First, let's start with Ryan the Viking and Zach Gilson. What was their primary contribution, particularly in that initial Beijing Dads group controversy, and why was it so foundational?
Right. Their role was absolutely foundational to that initial major conflict. They really set a deeply negative precedent for the group's communication style. Their persistent use of derogatory language, Coomer, Elder Coom, and mocking of Merlin in the Beijing Dads group, initiated and fueled much of the initial conflict. This wasn't just expressing an isolated opinion, it felt like a deliberate and sustained campaign of ridicule, a form of active online harassment, really.
From the very beginning.
Yeah. Ryan's Take That breeders early on at 16.52.12, followed by the Lomao Elderly Coomer group at 19.3.44, instantly set an aggressively derisive and exclusionary tone.
And Zach Gilson.
He later chimed in with Back to Elder Coom at a 20.1.118, even after Merlin's departure, demonstrating a continued, almost celebratory commitment to the offensive rhetoric and a complete lack of empathy.
So their actions directly led to Merlin leaving.
Directly responsible for Merlin's explicit offense and his eventual public departure, as he stated, peace out, this isn't the group for me, at 20.19.06. This constant, unprovoked antagonism just poisoned the well early on, established a low bar for civil discourse, and demonstrated that mockery, even when deeply offensive, wouldn't be seriously challenged by others until much later, effectively normalizing toxicity for the remaining members.
Okay, then there's John. He became central to the Last of Us debate, pushing that conversation to its breaking point. How did his actions specifically contribute to the escalation there, leading to his removal?
John's contribution was primarily in the escalation of that second major conflict, the one revolving around media representation. He displayed strong opinions and persistent focus on Bella Ramsey's physical appearance in The Last of Us show, particularly on her perceived age.
Right, sticking to that point.
Yeah. His comment, "It's just that she looks like a child," at 11.07.18 on April 24th, became a focal point for Louis' argument about the underlying motivations of the critics. Shifted the debate from character portrayal to implied personal judgment about finding a teen girl unattractive.
That was the key pivot.
It was. Despite Louis' repeated attempts to shift the conversation towards the actress's performance or to directly challenge the perceived inappropriate focus on her appearance, John remained steadfast in his stance, refused to yield or acknowledge any nuance.
So his persistence.
His persistence and his refusal to acknowledge Louis' reframing of the discussion directly led to the heated exchange that culminated in his removal. His insistence on his perceived visual truth, overriding factual aid or artistic intent, created an impasse that proved unresolvable through dialogue, essentially cornered the moderator into taking decisive action.
Okay. And Andrew Nee also played a significant and quite active role in that second conflict, didn't he? Not just through his words, but his actions.
Absolutely. Andrew Nee's actions were crucial in accelerating the personal attacks against Louis and overtly undermining the moderator's authority.
How so?
His comments, particularly accusing Louis of using a straw man argument at 11.07.39 and labeling Louis' direct challenge to the critics as extremely toxic at 11.09.55, contributed significantly to the animosity. By directly challenging Louis' motives and character in such strong terms, Andrew escalated the conflict from a debate about a TV show to a personal confrontation with the group's administrator, questioned his integrity and judgment.
Created open defiance.
Right, he openly challenged the moderator's authority and judgment, which further fractured the group's cohesion. And moreover, his immediate creation of a rival group movie and sharing its QR code at 11.14.21, accompanied by that explicit invitation to those, if you don't like being kicked because some mod is throwing retrums over people disagreeing. It really does. Speaks volumes about his direct defiance and active role in fragmenting the original community. This act wasn't just disagreement. It was a deliberate act of secession and an attempt to rally dissenting members into a new, potentially less moderated space.
Okay, now Merlin. As we discussed, he was arguably a victim in the first conflict, facing sustained mockery and offensive language. But the analysis also lists him as a contributor to the overall breakdown, which might seem counterintuitive. Why is that?
That's an excellent point, and it highlights the nuanced and often unintentional ways individuals contribute to group dynamics, even when they are the target of aggression.
Right.
While Merlin was indeed largely a target of mockery and offensive language, his strong reaction and public departure, while understandable, also adds to the dramatic breakdown of the group dynamic.
How does his leaving add to the breakdown?
Well, his decision to leave, although provoked by the instant shit-talking that brings everyone's IQ just a bit down at 20.75.48, became a prominent event that the remaining members continued to mock.
They used it as more fuel.
Exactly. Sean, for example, joked about buying the Boomer Coomer during the Steam sale at 20.23.24, and Nicholas noted his departure was the straw that broke the camel's back at 21.07.17. This ongoing mockery after his departure reinforced the negative atmosphere rather than resolving it.
So his leaving didn't deter them?
No. While his reaction was a legitimate response to harassment, the manner of his exit and the subsequent group reaction cemented a pattern where leaving became fodder for further derision, thus contributing to the persistent toxicity rather than serving as a deterrent. His absence furthermore removed a voice of dissent and maybe a more empathetic perspective.
Allowing the negative tone to dominate even more.
Potentially, yeah. Allowing the antagonistic tone to become even more dominant and unchecked in his absence.
Okay, finally, let's consider Louis the moderator. How does the analysis view his role, given his attempts to manage the conflict and its ultimate decision to close groups? He seems to have been in an incredibly difficult position.
Louis' role is indeed complex and multifaceted, embodies the inherent pressures and pitfalls of online moderation. As an administrator, his decision to kick John is a direct action leading to the group's fragmentation. No question about that direct link.
But was it justified?
Well, while his frustration was clearly justified by the persistent conflicts, the escalating personal attacks, and the perceived inappropriate nature of the discussion, the timing and communication around the kick contribute to the perception of a heavy-handed approach, as highlighted by Andrew Mee's subsequent comment about some mod throwing retrums.
So the execution mattered.
Critically, it points to a key challenge for moderators. Actions, even if justified, can be perceived as arbitrary or tyrannical, leading to further backlash. His apologies to Lucas Pinoli for that earlier, unrelated, perceived slight also reveal a human side, right? Capable of misjudgment but also remorse. Shows he wasn't a purely detached authority figure.
Right.
His final attempt to formalize rules with the group notice at 11.3000 on April 24th was a clear recognition of a failed informal moderation strategy, a desperate attempt to impose structure. However, ultimately, his deep frustration with the ongoing issues led him to close several other niche groups, as stated in our sources.
Demonstrating the impact on the admin, too.
Profoundly. The profound impact of unresolved conflict, not just on the immediate chat dynamics, but on the well-being and willingness of administrators to continue their roles, highlights the often thankless and emotionally draining nature of online community management. His actions, while perhaps necessary from his perspective to maintain any semblance of order, were also direct catalysts for the observed dissolution and splintering.
So if we bring all these individual contributions together, it's clearly not a simple case of one bad apple, is it? It's a confluence of behaviors and dynamics that led to this group's unraveling, a kind of tragic story of a community that couldn't regulate itself.
Precisely. The transcripts illustrate a profound breakdown in online group dynamics, driven by a complex combination of interwoven factors, each feeding into the next in a kind of vicious cycle.
Where were the main factors again?
Firstly, there was the negative commentary on external groups, like the relentless mocking of the Beijing Dads group, which set a low precedent for empathetic or respectful discourse, established a cultural norm where derision was acceptable.
Okay.
This was then profoundly exacerbated by the persistent use of derogatory language, such as Coomer and Gooner, which were employed not just as insults but as a form of social exclusion, directly causing deep offense and leading to Merlin's departure.
Right, factor two.
Secondly, the group engaged in heated debates on subjective topics, most notably the discussion about Bella Ramsey's appearance, where deeply held personal opinions clashed intensely with attempts at more objective or performance-based critique. Members refused to acknowledge alternative viewpoints,
Leading to conflict.
Right. This struggle to maintain civility in such passionate debates highlighted a fundamental failure to manage conflict effectively. Within the group's informal social contract, there was no collective mechanism for de-escalation or resolution.
So it just spiraled.
Pretty much. The persistent mocking and offensive terms by members like Ryan and Zach, coupled with intense disagreements like John's steadfast focus on appearance and the administrator Louis' decisive and sometimes perceived as heavy-handed actions, these were the most significant drivers of dissolution. It was a self-reinforcing loop.
A loop of what?
Where a pervasive lack of respect and inability to find common ground and the failure of moderation to be universally accepted cumulatively led to members leaving, being kicked, and ultimately groups being closed down. The collective tolerance for incivility slowly eroded the group's very foundation. ###happily.
Wow, what a deep dive into the sometimes chaotic, often frustrating, but yeah, undeniably fascinating world of online community. From the initial casual mockery of the Beijing Dads group that just quickly spiraled into the uncomfortable use of terms like Coomer, to the highly charged debate over an actress's appearance that escalated to personal attacks against the moderator.
Yeah, straight up attacks.
And ultimately, the dissolution of groups and the imposition of strict new rules, these WeChat transcripts offer a really candid and unsettling look at how quickly online discourse can just completely unravel.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it, that even seemingly casual chat spaces require a delicate balance of respect and understanding to actually thrive.
Yeah.
It really does serve as a powerful case study in the sociology of digital interactions. We saw how seemingly small provocations could escalate rapidly, how different personalities reacted to and actively contributed to conflict, and the immense pressure placed on moderators trying to maintain order in the face of persistent incivility and resistance.
It wasn't just one thing.
Exactly. The sources highlight that it's rarely one person or one event that causes such widespread fragmentation. Instead, it's a complex interplay of individual actions, a developing group culture that somehow normalized certain destructive behaviors, and the inherent challenges of nuanced communication in a text-based environment.
Yes, so much gets lost in text.
Right. The breakdown wasn't instantaneous. It was a slow, cumulative erosion of civility and trust that eventually reached a tipping point.
And what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate your own digital life? Well, whether you're managing an online community, actively participating in one, or maybe just observing from a distance, understanding these dynamics is, well, it's crucial, isn't it?
I think so.
It shows us the delicate balance between freedom of expression and the fundamental need for civil discourse, and how important it is for participants to consider the tangible impact of their words on others,
Right.
even in what might seem like a casual chat. It also highlights the often thankless and incredibly difficult job of a moderator who bears the burden of maintaining order when that balance is lost, sometimes at considerable personal cost.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this. In an era where so much of our interaction happens online and digital communities often become extensions of our social lives, how can we, as individuals and as communities, foster environments that encourage genuine, respectful exchange, even when discussing contentious topics, without resorting to the behaviors that lead to conflict and fragmentation?
That's the big question.
What role do you personally play in shaping the digital spaces you inhabit? And what is your personal threshold for engaging with or tolerating disruptive behavior before you decide to disengage or perhaps try to intervene?
That's a powerful question to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into online group dynamics. We hope you've gained some valuable insights into the fascinating and sometimes frustrating world of digital communities. Until next time, keep digging for knowledge.